Right, okay, shall we start? Sarah and I do look very happy. We were very happy. We're about 3 bottles in by then. Each. No, not each. I'm joking. It was lovely. Yeah, it was really nice. Yes, okay, let us begin. Let us begin. So, last week was all about hair and hairdressing. So now many people have been to the hairdressers. And what are we all up to now? We are all dining al fresco. Well, at least that's what I was doing yesterday. Let me turn the comments off. And so if you are interested in art, which presumably you are because you're watching today, you might well have picked up that this lovely lady that I used for in my stories, that I commented on in stories, she is part of obviously a much wider, much bigger painting, and that is this work here. And this is quite a famous painting called Luncheon of the Boating Party by Renoir. And the whole, so I was mentioning that I was connecting her to Amelie. I don't know whether you saw on my Instagram feed or in my stories, I was connecting this lady. She's a different asset. Oh, the new Instagram is interesting. So I was linking this lady here who's in the midst of this luncheon party. I was linking her to Amélie, the film Amélie, French film Amélie, and that's because she features in Amélie. So just briefly, if you've seen the film, it is quite a lovely film, although I watched it again actually after I'd put the comments up, after I put my the little video on the feed, and I remembered that it actually annoyed me a little bit the first time I watched it, and it duly annoyed me a little bit again. She's just so like, oh, I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But the point is that she is watching this man, one of her neighbours, and he can't go outside. He's called the Glass Man because he has, he's not called the Glass Man, they call him the Glass Man because he has very fragile bones, and so he has to stay in all the time. And what he does with his time is that he paints every year. He paints Renoir's Luncheon of the Boating Party, and he actually says, it's really quite lovely actually, he says that he really enjoys painting the glances and the interactions of people, which is very much about interactions. But that she is an enigma to him, this lady in the centre, she's an enigma to him because she is the only one that isn't really interacting. And this sort of sparks off a chain of thoughts for Amélie, and this Glass Man actually sort of helps Amélie discover herself a little bit through this painting. So that's what all that was about. The lovely film Amélie that slightly annoyed me, but maybe not go there. And this is what we're talking about today. So I said that it is all about glances. It really is a fantastic painting. It was painted in 1881, and what's quite interesting, well, there's lots of quite interesting things about it, but one of the interesting things that's often commented on is the fact that it is absolutely a mixture of landscape painting, so this beautiful background. I think you can see it a little bit better. Which one should I choose? Perhaps here, so you can see the boats and so on, and the river Seine behind them all. So that's one part of the painting, but then of course there is on the table here, this is still life, so this is another part of the painting. Everything on the table really beautifully depicted, but depicted in quite a different way to the people, which is the third part of the painting, which is portraiture. And I say it's depicted in a different way because it is an impressionist work. It would probably be categorized as an impressionist work. But in many respects, it kind of isn't. Although it's, you know what, it's really difficult. People say to me, okay, so what does an impressionist work mean? And they didn't have a manifesto. So they didn't write it down, a list of rules. This is what you have to do to be an impressionist. It was far looser than that. It was just a group of people around at the same time, in the same place, who all had a fairly similar attitude towards art. They were sort of taking it away from very formal compositions, although the painting does have quite a formal composition in many respects. It's a bit hard to show you, but the railing going along the back, that sort of gives you a sense of perspective that you don't get necessarily quite so often in impressionist paintings. And then the three people, so you've got the guy sitting in the lower right hand corner with the hat on, and then the lady interacting with him with the white hat on, and then further along the table you've got the guy with his back to us with the bowler hat who's talking to the lady standing on the railing. And so actually, if you draw a line through their shoulders to where it meets the railing, it's a lovely sort of triangular composition. So it is quite we kind of think it's not a formal composition, but he has kind of put a little bit of formality into the way that he has arranged this painting. But the background quite loosely painted, the still life quite loosely painted on the table. Let's see if I can. It's a bit difficult to point this out. Yeah, okay, so that's a better bit of the table. So look at the glasses. They haven't got any. They're not defined. It's not like they've been drawn first. They've absolutely just been painted in. It's basically just light and dark with a little bit of red paint to show the dregs of a glass of red wine at the end of a very lovely looking lunch, it has to be said, doesn't it? So that's the background and the still life. But then if you notice, the figures a little bit differently painted. So outlined a little bit more. He's used a sort of finer brush. The brushwork isn't as loose. They're more modelled. They are more. They look more three-dimensional. So they definitely don't look like flat people. They are definitely rounded, three-dimensional people in this space that looks slightly flat, but doesn't look so flat because of this railing that goes back. So it just adds a little bit of dynamism, a little bit of energy. But loads of energy in this painting, because they are all chatting to each other. And they're all chatting to each other because obviously in the painting they're all friends, and in real life they're all friends. So I said that this is partly portraiture, and all of these people are portraits. So they're all people that Renoir actually knew. I should have said he painted this in 1881. And it was right from the outset actually quite a hit, which was again quite unusual with Impressionist painters. They didn't do so well, not really at the beginning. No one really understood what they were trying to do. They broke away from the traditions of painting. So this was great, and it needed to be a hit, because actually Renoir took about 16 months to paint each individual person, not 16 months per person, but 16 months in total to paint each individual. And he would have painted them in situ, so he would have painted them outside, come and had them pose for him. So he would have worked up the composition as a whole, and then had each individual come and sit and pose for him. So I just want to point out a few of the people that are in this painting. So the guy on the left-hand side, who is leaning against the railings in the sort of singlet and the boating hat, is a guy called Alfonso Fornes. And then the lady leaning on the railing, also in the boating hat, is Alphonsine Fornes. Not a married couple who just happen to have the masculine and feminine of the same name. They are actually brother and sister with incredibly unimaginative parents, I think. But the Fornes family actually ran the restaurant. So this is on the terrace of a restaurant called Maison Franais. So they are the son and the daughter of the owner and his wife. Then you have the lady sitting with the little lapdog. I think I've got a close up of her. Very pretty lady. This is Aline Charigot, who actually ended up marrying Renoir. So she was a seamstress, and so she's there cooing at her little lapdog. I always think the dog looks slightly surprised. Slightly surprised expression on his face, and that might be because originally Aline wasn't in this painting. Originally this lady with the dog was somebody else, but then Renoir met Aline and completely fell head over heels in love with her, wanted to include her, and so scraped away the face of the original model, and replaced it with that of Aline, who I mentioned he then went on to marry. So I think the dog's looking surprised because it's not the original face he was looking at. He's, what's going on? But yes, quite lovely. So that's a gaze. She's gazing at the dog. Then on the other side of the table is this gentleman here. So he's obviously been rowing as well. So this was a very popular restaurant for rowers because you could get to it directly from the river. So perfect. So they've been out rowing, then they've had a good old lunch where they've met up with people that haven't been rowing, artistic types and actresses, all sorts of people. So he is another artist. So this is Gustave Caillebotte. Just sitting here talking to this lady, and in fact throughout the whole image, I won't go through every single person, but throughout the whole image there are famous people and people that Renoir knew, so each individual sort of interacting with the others. I like the way that she's sort of got her head cocked and she's listening to him quite intently, but he doesn't seem to be saying anything. So he's kind of looking at somebody else, and she's not. But let's just come back to the lady in the centre here. Here she is. So this enigmatic lady who isn't really interacting with anybody. She's sitting drinking her water. Probably should have done a bit more of that yesterday. This is an actress called Ellen Andre, and she was also quite often posed as an artist's model. So she posed for Degas as well as Renoir. So she is also in Degas' The Absinthe Drinkers. So this is an earlier painting. This is 1875, 1876. She's not looking quite so well here, is she? She's looking as green as her absinthe drink. Not looking terribly happy either. It's a bit of a melancholy image, especially in comparison to this lovely, vibrant, happy, yes, gorgeous, upbeat lunch here, although she's sort of got the same faraway expression. So, but as far as I'm aware, she was quite a lovely, happy lady. So let's just go back to the main image. Yeah, so the Maison Franais, you can actually still go there today. It closed in 1906, so from being a really famous, very popular restaurant, it closed in 1906. But then when people got really interested in the Impressionists, and people were looking at this painting and so on, there was a campaign, if you like, to reopen it, and money was raised. And I think it was as late as the 1990s, actually, that it was opened again. But you can go there now. So it's in a place just outside of Paris called Chatou. And the restaurant is still there with the terrace, Maison Franais. Of course, they've added a shop and a museum and so on. So it can be parted with your money in many different ways, especially after a nice lunch, perhaps a little bit freer. So it's open. The painting is now, and actually has been for quite some time, is in the States. It's in Washington. So when it was first painted, it was purchased by a gentleman called, I can't remember his first name, Uruand Durel Uruand. Oh my God, he's a really famous arts collector. Durand Ruel. Oh, my French isn't very good today either, is it? And he had the painting for years, in fact, until he died in the 1920s. And then it was purchased by an American art collector, a guy called Duncan Phillips, who opened the first museum of modern art, really, in Washington. Probably the first, or certainly one of the first in the whole of the United States. And he had this Renoir, and he absolutely loved it. There's a story that quite a bitchy fellow art collector said to Duncan Phillips, "Oh," he said, as he's going around his museum, "so this is the only Renoir that you have?" And Duncan Phillips said, "It's the only Renoir that I need." I love that. So this, yes, it's in Washington, D.C., Luncheon of the Boating Party. Fantastic work. It's big. It's nearly life-size. There's not a mixture of styles, because I don't think the styles are so different that they sort of stand out as being separate styles, but he has definitely painted the figures in a slightly more, if I say, refined way, less loose way than the still life and the landscape, and full of people that he knew. So, Luncheon of the Boating Party, Renoir, 1881. Let's turn that off and turn comments back on. Yeah, we got through that. Oh, my word. Speak to you soon. Bye.